Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Week 3 4-player FFA bonus match for the ongoing community tournament. We've got Zorbaz, Zecrus, twodback, and AndreasG participating today, and we're back to having Philithanic do the commentary with us. It seems like a bit of a generous series map to me.
Yeah. So the 4-player version is a little bit more generous than the 8-player version, since most of the resources were in the middle. So we probably will see a nomad up to the northeast of the colony. We could see some scientists down here in this ice iron. We do have that first nomad found with Zorbaz, and we do have twodback picking up that ice scientist spot that I mentioned. Now we have Zecrus and Andreas.
Yeah, and those are a couple of pricey founds that we've seen immediately this game. Interesting that Zorbaz is picking up carbon right away on this level. Carbon, I don't know if that's that valuable. However, I will admit doesn't look like there's a great huge amount of carbon everywhere in this game.
Yeah, there's just that inside the crater directly to the east of the colony.
A nomadic HQ has been founded.
Right, and it does seem a little weird to me to prioritize the carbon that much, because it is going to slow down your upgrades a little bit, and of course, as a nomad, oftentimes you're going to want to prioritize those upgrades so you can take advantage of how it's one of your small advantages, right? You can upgrade quickly, you want to take the best stuff on the map. However, interestingly enough, our first player to HQ2 this game going to be AndreasG, who wisely founds next to a bunch of water, sells it down to get the upgrade.
Yep, that might be one of the faster elite HQ upgrades that I've seen in a while. Now, part of the problem with the Nomads is, I believe, electronics started
200.
Yes.
Yeah, electronics started 200.
They don't start with any electronics.
Yeah, they don't start with any resources at all.
Have been increasing that price of electronics consistently. So this, you think, oh, Nomad, that's a really good found. And then you found it like, oh, I need all these electronics. And that's probably why Zorbaz is going in for this carbon, because he immediately is moving into they're immediately moving into 2 electronics factories.
Yeah, and the carbon's definitely going to be helpful now that the electronics factories are coming online. These are not going to be super profitable, but at least Zorbaz is going to keep the whole situation in check, and it will allow him to continue upgrading. But I gotta say, normally if I spot that electronics are starting double price, it's not something I'm really not wanting to go Nomad. It's just so much more expensive to get to that second HQ level, and even further onward, you have to start making electronics. They're not necessarily all that profitable, and things can just look pretty weak for you compared to a more standard game.
Mm-hmm. That's part of the reason why I chose this map seed.
HQ has been upgraded.
Oh boy, double electronics price, making things hard.
It was the primary thing for this map seed is I wanted to make a 2v2 tournament that was hardest to hack power, because hacking power to victory in a 2v2 is honestly quite boring.
True.
So I picked a map where there were no robots, the power started regular, it wasn't the power colony. And
the colony's fighting you on that front. It's got one little office already.
Oh well. I mean, it's always going to go high on Ceres anyway. But we do have twodback with getting to HQ3 right behind Zorbaz, who is also an HQ3. Those 2 electronics factories are doing some work in terms of allowing them to actually upgrade.
Yeah, definitely good to be able to upgrade it all. Always going to be a positive thing for you. I'm kind of curious. Zorbaz, he's got 1 claim left over. He's going into a nuclear plant now. I imagine we'll see a second one join that. And did he pick up a claim? He got an extra claim back. Okay, yeah, he's canceling stuff. He's moving stuff around. He is going to land on just a pair of nuclear plants, though.
Makes sense. Power is at 180 and climbing. Andreas, despite getting pirated on his source of iron, did beat Zecrus to 3 once again, and Zecrus is just sort of struggling over here. a lot.
Yeah, Zecrus even in a worse spot than Zorbaz, realistically.
Shipping.
That is not looking good for him. Just that standard electronics price problem, it seems. Exact same thing happening to him, but he hasn't done anything to compensate for it.
No, and
How could one refuse
he is.
such a wonderful
They are
plot of
sitting in
land?
a bunch of carbon, and instead of going for electronics, they're going for chemical refineries,
Yeah.
which do make $1 a second more in profit, but what they don't do help you upgrade.
Yeah, and the other issue is, of course, that there's not really, I'm not spotting any significant pressure on chemicals at all this game. Whereas electronics, you at least have this advantage where, all right, they're not great right now, but I need to keep them in check
Congratulations.
so that I can continue to upgrade. But they're also going to keep getting more valuable. And so as long as I can push through upgrades, set myself up in that market's going to be even more valuable later, and you'll be in a good spot eventually. Whereas this chemicals really feels like a very, very short-term thing that just ends up being a less valuable play at the end of the day.
Alright, so we have people targeting Zorbaz, but I think that's a mistake. I think twodback might actually be in the lead right now.
The black market
That's true.
is
That's
open for
true.
business.
Scientist on this series that has iron and water is always going to be quite strong.
Yeah, plenty of iron and water for him. I am curious who's going to find a source of uranium they're happy with first. I mean, there's like this one patch of uranium. I'm a little concerned that uranium's up to 93 already. It's starting to push up to 100. That can be a really valuable resource sometimes, since everybody has now figured out that nuclear plants are kind of the power source on Ceres and Io. And of course, there's no natural basalt on Ceres pushing that uranium price down. So I'm kind of curious who's going to actually get into that resource first. It's up at 100 per. I mean, that's some really nice profits from even a medium and a low uranium mine right now.
Yeah, the reason why nuclear plants, it wasn't just everyone discovering they were better, it's also reducing the water cost from 0.5 to 0.25 a second.
That did have an impact as well, I'll admit that. Although I think it's a little less impactful than everybody eventually realizing, man, solar condensers are just kind of bad comparatively. But hey, both things definitely contribute to the ever-increasing cost of uranium in each of my Ceres games.
Yes, well, now twodback is at HQ4, as is Zorbaz, and you can sort of see the strength that twodback has over Zorbaz. Was sitting on 40k cash. A lot of that immediately went into some construction of buildings somewhere.
Yeah, that nuke definitely hurting Zorbaz, and you can feel it just because he's draining so much cash into production. twodback is as well with that expensive steel, but at least he can keep that churning out consistently. Zorbaz, I think he's just got 2 low silicons for the moment.
Then we have Andreas struggling in D debt as an elite, which is unfortunately a normal occurrence for elites on Ceres.
Yeah, I don't know if elites really do anything else on Ceres besides struggle around in very, very high amounts of debt. It's pretty standard. I'll be impressed when somebody manages not to. Also, twodback, by the way, is going to be our player who noticed that ridiculous aluminum price first. $260 is the current cost. That shortage from a metal stores suffer oxidation event definitely going to help him out. That is an extremely valuable tile right now. 427 per second in profit. All right, Zecrus is actually potentially in danger of being bought out by twodback. twodback has an absurd amount of cash at the moment. AndreasG, however, also is going to need to be concerned, as it would not be too expensive to completely purchase AndreasG. He's just in so much debt. Might have to pay that down. Oh, upgrading. That's dangerous. If I were twodback, I'd be looking at that as a potential subsidiary.
Andreas does have all 5 of their shares bought up.
He does, but even so, I mean, $14 stock price. That is very low.
If you stay at an HQ3, it wasn't going to get much higher other than paying down debt, and then you're delaying the upgrade, which means you don't have as much money to pay down debt after the upgrade. So it's one of those risks that Andreas just had to take.
It potentially is. It is, and it doesn't look like twodback is making any moves at this point. He does have the option, of course, of just sitting back. Moving on up to 5, he could get a hacker ray down and try and play with uranium a little more, which would be very, very tempting to me in this position.
So,
a hacker array,
Nice.
or perhaps moving into optimization center and start to optimize some things. Life support staying quite high as the colony has decided to go mostly into habitats instead of garages, and we have 4 life support HQs and no robots.
Yeah, that life support is getting a bit out of control, which is, once again, kind of an advantage for twodback, in my opinion. He has enough over here. I mean, and I really love this, the fact that he's got, like, 5 ice tiles here and then 1 little lone water tile with them. That just sets him up nicely to have 6 sources of life support production, and even so, moving into some solar condensers now, and a hacker array. That's what I wanted to see.
And the
Let's see some
optimization
uranium
center.
tanks.
So,
Oh, yeah. He's just very well set up on HQ5 and is going to start pushing into Zorbaz. Zorbaz will be able to defend himself if he chooses to, but he's HQ5 and he's pretty cheap to pick up at a $20 stock price, so I'm not too surprised to see twodback choosing to get aggressive with his big advantage instead of trying to consolidate a little bit more. No need to, may as well get the kills done.
continually power surging Andreas life support. Andreas is just going to continue to fall further and further into debt. Zecrus has their power plants up, but they didn't have enough uranium. Zecrus is losing cash at a tremendous rate, just trying to keep these reactors alive. They're only making $2 a second, now -1.
Oh boy.
Pretty soon not going to be able to support those, and that was definitely a mistake because power is only 88, and the inputs for that, the uranium, almost 300.
Yeah, this is one of those few times when maybe if you are a little worried about power, you can go ahead and get some solar panels down, but I think you're going to be a lot better served if you're someone like Zecrus, just forgetting power, get rid of the tiles, go into the uranium and water that you need. You've got 6 return of claims. It's time to be using them.
Alright, I'm going to point out something right now. Nukes are 3K.
I
The
know.
one tile that you can nuke for the scientist is not gooned.
Yeah, go ahead and pick that up. Get rid of it. I would have potentially liked to see twodback maybe go into a patent lab instead of an optimization center to secure a tool like slant drilling and help combat that. But it shouldn't be too important at the end of the day. I would like to see a nuke on this uranium, though. If I'm someone like Zecrus, well, the problem is who's going to do the nuking, right?
Oh,
AndreasG and Zecrus are both in high debt. Zorbaz can't buy black market at all.
The other thing is that Zecrus really needs to do is, instead of having these nuclear plants that are making $6 a second, Zecrus has 6 return of claims right here.
Exactly.
There are, well, there's only 1 nuclear tile right now. I'd use a return to claim, pick up that tile. That tile is going to be worth 317.
But you take that, you take some water or some ice, just something, right? Something a little bit better than these production tiles, unless you can find something good to produce, like maybe food, though twodback's playing around with that a lot. You could go back into your chems, those are going to be alright for the time being. Alright, twodback basically locks up the game with that one buy.
Yep,
Finishes purchasing half of Zorbaz, which grants him half of Zecrus. The dominoes should just fall very quickly from this point forward. He only needs 100,000 more to finish off Zecrus, and from there it's only about 250, 300,000, depending on exactly how it goes down. Maybe as much as 350, 400 to finish off AndreasG, but not difficult money for twodback to come up with. And I'm glad to see the hacker array getting some use in a game like this. You expect it out of DT, you expect it out of Blues. It's the games like this where we're almost always pushing. I wish they were using a hacker array to back this up, and this time we got it.
Yeah, twodback making good use of the hacker array. Zorbaz helping twodback out by purchasing into Zecrus. So I understand why you would purchase into another player, but when the leader's buying into you, don't panic purchase into the 4th place player. That's only going to help the leader.
That's very, very true. All right, Zecrus is down. Just AndreasG to go. 319. Clean that up from here. AndreasG. He did manage to eventually get his debt in some degree of order.
It's been
Never
fluctuating
played
between
Elite before. Well,
B and C. Well, playing Elite on a series is definitely the roughest choice you can make for learning that faction.
Yeah, it's not really something I would recommend to anybody. I mean, IO is really the place where Elite shines, if anywhere. If anywhere. And it's a very, very difficult faction to get a hang of on Ceres. So twodback does go ahead and clean that up. That was a pretty quick game for him to finish up without any majority buys. But good work to him. He found that scientific location, and man, he made it work.
Yeah, scientific location taking it second, which was definitely a mistake. We can look and we can see how much he actually paid for that. On the balance sheet, $20,000 for that science.
Yeah.
I'd say it was worth every penny and probably more than that. Especially
it was a really nice spot.
Especially when you go around and you look and you realize there's only HQs that consume life support, so that's going to be a thing throughout the entire game. It's not like you're going to be fighting, 4 robots as a scientist and there's no life support consumption. So a good job for twodback identifying that spot and then taking it almost immediately after Zorbaz found it, 2 seconds later, making sure that nobody else could take it.
It was very nice. I'm trying to think through and spot kind of anything else that I think is near as valuable as that tile or as that location for twodback, and I'm just not seeing it, honestly. It's such a great scientific location. It's difficult to argue that would have possibly been an incorrect decision. I mean, I'm just not seeing one.
No. Unfortunately, the 8-player version of this map was a little bit more, had a few more founding spots that were good than just the one. But, equivalent of playing a random map and there only being one spot, that's what happens in Offworld Trading Company sometimes.
Absolutely is. Now, I think you could have potentially tried to make expansive work, for example. Like there were things you could have done. I think expansive was our last one that we didn't actually see, and I think if I'm going to pick anything that isn't this scientific, I'm going expansive this game. Nomad, I've tried Nomad on Ceres time after time after time. I always just feel like the diminishing resources hurt so much.
The diminishing resources do hurt so much. What you really need for Nomad on Ceres is for there to be bribe claims on there so you can combat that diminishing returns, and you need at least medium, if not low, electronics. That way you can get to those upgrades, and then, if people... And enough silicon that if people do start nuking you, you can rotate around, unlike Zorbaz. It just
exactly. It just felt very light on the silicon.
It's definitely possible to play Nomads on Ceres.
Oh, it's possible. You just have to have maybe a little better circumstances than we saw this game, I think.
Right.
For it to be a good decision.
Always going to be difficult to start as a Nomad with double electronics. Even more so when it is a electronics colony.
And even so, last week I was playing Nomads on Ceres and got to the point where it's like, well, I'm HQ4. Can't get to 5 because there's just not enough silicon on this map. And the price had gone insane, like $400, $500 silicon. It was just nuts. So you have to be really, really careful about that kind of thing as a Nomad on Ceres.